This is the GeoSketch Tools video for the Line Tool. There are three basic differences between the GeoSketch Line Tool and the standard SketchUp Line Tool. The first one, and most important, is that the Line Tool will project lines from aux views into the modeling space, and this is in fact the whole reason for the GeoSketch Line Tool. However, the other differences are that once you have created a closed face, then the GeoSketch Line Tool will automatically extrude it and apply textures to the sides of the extrusion based on your aux views as well as the top face. And the final difference is that the GeoSketch inferencing is different than the standard SketchUp inferencing as described in concept videos number 4 and number 5. So in this example, we'll build a model of this rectangular building using the Line Tool. First, we'll rotate around using the arrow keys, which are enabled when we're in the Line Tool, to an aux view where we can see the footprint of this building. The next thing we'll do is use the modifier key to set the altitude of our working plane. If I just tap the Alt key, then I can key in my altitude of -22 feet. And concept videos number 2 and number 3 describe the process of finding the ground plane. And so now our scribe, or our ray that's being traced from the aux view into the modeling space, has turned blue to inform us that we're working at an altitude, and the tooltip and the prompt tell us that our altitude is -22 feet. So we can also see the inferencing that occurs. We'll start at this corner of the building and go over and draw to this corner. And now as we start to draw the next edge, we see when it's perpendicular to the first edge, we see that we get the inferencing. And it's also drawing our line both in the aux view and in the modeling space. And this is an option that you can turn off if you go to the GeoSketch settings, and it's by default this item is checked, which says GeoSketch Draw in aux view. If we uncheck that item, then it's not drawing our lines in the aux view, it's just drawing them in the modeling space, and we can see them turn cyan to indicate that we have a perpendicularity inference. But in most cases you'll probably prefer to have that option on to draw in the aux views. So we can't see that other corner of the building, so we can use the arrows to rotate around to a view where we can see that other corner. And we'll get the inferencing to make it perpendicular and at that corner. And as we do the third edge, we'll get inferencing both for the perpendicularity and for when it's even with the starting point of that first edge. And we'll select that point, and then we'll close it by connecting it back to the start point. And then because that created a face, it immediately extruded it and applied geospecific texturing on the sides, and it put us into the push-pull tool so that we can extrude the shape of the building and refine it by getting the edges to line up the corners. So we can also use the Line Tool just to draw lines without projecting from an aux view. And the inferencing takes place here, and we can see some of the modifier keys. So for example, it also supports the shift key so that it'll lock the current inferencing. So I'll hold down the shift key, and even if I move the cursor away from being perpendicular, it's locking the perpendicularity inference until I release the shift key, and then as I move away it loses that inference. And we can also use the control key to turn off the inferencing. So if I hold down the control key, as I move it to that perpendicular position, it doesn't do the inferencing. That way, if you wanted to get it to where it's close to being perpendicular but not quite, you can turn off inferencing, and then you can get it at that close position. And the other modifier key is the tab key, which will show us the things that are in the inference buffer. And we can also add things to the inference buffer by putting the cursor over an existing entity and holding down the tab key. And then any entities that we selected will be added to the inference buffer, and we can inference to them. And when we have inferencing, it'll highlight the item that is perpendicular to. So there we're perpendicular to the edge at the foot of this building. And the last unique thing about the Line Tool is that it'll tell us if we're tangent to an arc. So I'll create an arc here, and it tells us that that arc is tangent to an existing line. Now if I switch back to the line tool, it'll tell me when my line is tangent to that arc. And this is the true tangent. It's not just tangent to the last segment of the arc, it's tangent to the actual circle that that arc represents. So those are the capabilities of the line tool. For review, there are 4 modifier keys. The control key turns off inferencing, and then when you release the control key, inferencing is turned back on. The shift key locks inferencing. The alt key is for setting the altitude, the working plane that you're working on. And also in the concepts video it showed how you can measure the height of a building so that you can work at the top of the building using the alt key. And then the tab key shows us what's in the inferencing buffer, and we can add things to the inferencing buffer. So that's it for the line tool.